What's going on, guys? This is Kaishro. Welcome back. How's 2024 faring with you guys? I hope you had a blast on your New Year celebration. But today we are also going to have an exciting video talking about the top 5 best rogue decks in January 2024 OCG format. These decks have solid chances on defeating the best decks on the format. Or should we say, these decks are the brigade to defeat the Fire Nation. Or simply put, the Snake Eyes, Fire King, Rescue Ace, and other fire-based decks on the format. But first, let me explain what a rogue deck is for our unfamiliar viewers regarding the terminology of rogue decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Rogue decks are decks that don't have the same spotlight as the meta decks on the format because the top meta decks are much represented and successful decks that are represented occasionally in the format. Even though they don't top in high numbers all the time, you can see some topping lists of these decks from here and there. And also decks that are just below the best available decks, meaning that they are the good decks or the better decks to play after the meta decks. But at the same time, these decks have shown fighting poise to combat the best decks. Decks that are well equipped with attributes and capabilities to best the top meta decks on the format. And these decks has a fairly good matchup spread on the meta game. So these decks don't struggle as much as the other decks facing the meta environment. So moving on. Now we sail towards our top 5 on this list. We have Horus Dogmatica, a combination of two solid engines that meshes well together to form a formidable control deck that capitalizes on controlling the tempo of the match with floodgates and trap cards, while also establishing a legitimate beatdown strategy using the Horus engine. Before we proceed towards our key pointers of the deck on our top 5, quick disclaimer guys that the sample deck lists provided here are by no means the standard or the correct way to build the deck, but only catered to my own deck building tendencies and how I view the deck building strategy to fare well against the format. So moving on towards the strengths, one notable aspect of the deck is it has absurd floodgates like Vanity's Fiend, and that is easily accessed on this deck using your Horus monsters as tribute fathers, and the continuous traps like Skill Drain and Summon Limit that prevents your opponent from playing the game. So when you can go first and establish this type of cards like the Fiend and the Summon Limit and Skill Drain, you're pretty much guaranteed to win the game because most decks doesn't have play arounds against this type of cards. And also most control decks suffer when losing the die roll, no? But this deck begs to differ because the Horus monsters can easily beat down anything. And the Dogmatica with Nadir package helps you to smoothen your going second experience. So whenever you lose the die roll, you can just use the Nadir to pitch something like the NTs to destroy cards on your opponent. So this deck doesn't really suffer that much like the other control and stand decks. So this deck has the advantage, even losing the die roll against other stand decks. And also it is also worth mentioning that the deck has trade in and desires that boosts the already consistent Horus engine to start your plays when going first, or by just breaking the board with rank 8 toolbox shenanigans of your Horus. However, the best decks right now won't play diddle-daddle against the Horus Dogmatica, as they will aim to out-tempo you with their sheer advantage on the pace of their decks, so you may lag behind against these type of decks. Fire Kings and other decks like Voiceless Voice are kinda too fast against you, and you're pretty much going to get out-tempoed by those decks. So yeah, that's the downside of these Horus Dogmatica. And also, the deck doesn't have the considerable depth to out-resource and salvage unfavorable matchups and situations. That's why I only rank this deck at 5th despite its redeeming qualities. But all in all, it is still a decent control deck to play this format. Moving towards our top 4, we have Dragon Link. The good old Dragon Link still has it, no? On this Year of the Dragon as well. And they're still kicking it off by having multiple tops from Korea and China tournaments at the beginning of January format. So yeah, I never really anticipated that Dragon Link will get tops from Chinese and Korean tournaments, especially other combo decks there are popular as well. But I think Dragon Link are having innovations and approach to innovate the deck and improve it this early 2024. So you are going to see why on this list. Moving on. Assessing the best qualities of the deck, first thing that comes to my mind is the very strong start that the Dragon Link has when they can go first. Setting up multiple negations like Boral and Dispater and Barone, and having access to Masquerena that will eventually go into SP Little Knight to interrupt the opponent's play. And also, Dragon Link also became more versatile. That's the factor. Thanks to adding Sinful Spoils on the deck and the unlifted ban on IB means that it opened a lot of passages on different plays for the deck, such as the Buster Lock. And it improved the ceiling of the deck overall. So now they have more intangibles to play on this Dragon Link using the Sinful Spoils package, and also it can be able to utilize the Buster Lock using the World Legacy cards on this list. So your going first is more formidable than ever because of the Buster Lock. And also, Dragon Link has been around on the meta since 2020. So this is a top deck last 2020. And the deck keeps on innovating despite the ban list or the hits it took due to huge amount of Dragon card pool on the game, and the deck is open for improvements whenever a welcome support is introduced. Before, Dragon Link has fallen off on the metagame, but when Darkwing Blast came and the Bestials came on the game, Dragon Link had a resurgence. So you can never count out the deck, to be honest, and they are very much adaptive on improvements and changes whenever a right support is available for them. But one glaring weakness of Dragon Link is a single cockroach. A single cockroach, a maxi, can devastate your deck and line of play as the deck needs to summon a lot. I mean a lot. One single maxi can give your opponent 6 to 8 draws. So imagine that you need to have 6 to 8 summons just to make your play. So it is very oppressive against the deck. And also, it is a very concerning factor where a deck that like this in a OCG format struggles very bad against Maxi, because we all know that OCG is warped with Maxi, and we need to always keep in mind to play around Maxi all the time. And also, when you cannot draw the correct cards and your hand cards are subpar or underwhelming, you may end up on Seals Pass or even worse, Little Knight Pass, because the deck has a lot of garnets to work around. You can already see that on this list. And I think that's very concerning as well, because you have a lot of bricks to work around on this deck. But yeah, overall, Dragon Link is still a world champion deck thanks to Polly Aronson. So it has a stature of success already, and it can be a solid deck in the hands of the right pilot on this format. So moving on towards our top 3. Cruising towards our number 3, we have the Church Sisters. So, X-Sister looks to cleanse the living hell we are experiencing with the Fire Nation decks on the format, as they look as top candidate to halt the dominance of Fire Kings by locking out the graveyard and mitigating their place using graveyard as well. So, moving on. One obvious strength of X-Sister this format is it is a menace against the best deck. It is no debate, Fire Kings is the best deck right now on the format. And any other decks that runs the Snake Eyes and Promethean package, such as Salamangreat and Infernoid, as this deck has the perfect kits to counter those strategies by disabling the graveyard and capitalizing off the effects on the graveyard as well. Hence, playing triple Arments on this list, or X-Sister Arment. So, this card is very effective right now on the format. That's why I opted to run 3 copies of Arment on this list. And it made the deck improve by sort of inches. And also, another top quality of X-Sister is this deck doesn't destroy cards as they banishes it or banishes them to interrupt the opponent. So your opponent who wants to capitalize on popping cards and destroy effects would be empty-handed when going against this deck right now. So using the Magnifica and Returnia, X-Sister has the correct interruption to combat the meta decks on the format. So decks like Fire King and rogue decks like Unchained, who decks that wants to pop cards on their disposal can be mitigated by X-Sister, because this deck banishes cards and it doesn't destroy them. So you are pretty much in a good spot against those decks. And also, Exo can utilize one of the best conditional hand trap on the game, most notably Dimension Shifter, as it aims to nullify the graveyard. And to top things off, X-Sister doesn't have drawbacks on pulling it off. So, X-Sister doesn't care about the graveyard any at all. So, you're pretty much fine when you can open Shifter and just resolve it perfectly and win the game from there, to be honest, because most decks really suffer around Shifter, and it is one of the main reasons why X-Sister is very good right now in the format, the ability to play Shifter on their main deck effectively. On the contrary, Ash Blossom can be really bad to play around with this deck, as it can obliterate the plays that you're going to run on this deck. So this deck is an Ash Magnet, sadly. Ash Blossom hurts a lot against Exo Sister, and also Exo can struggle against the popular sideboard cards on the metagame such as Duster and Lightning Storm that can sweep your back row strategy and also annihilate your defenseless Magnifica, who doesn't have an on-negate protection as well. So I think this deck can be fragile at times, but overall the ability of Exo to nullify the graveyard makes them a very solid choice to go rogue on this format. So zooming towards our number 2 on this list, we have Sky Striker, the Eternal deck, a deck that is bound to outlast the Sands of Time. We have the evergreen Sky Striker, a crowd favorite by the Yu-Gi-Oh players. The Sentoki community had a resurgence following its support recently that made the deck more fluid and resilient. So, moving on. The best key aspect of its strengths are the recent support the Sky Striker have received to buff the deck and make the deck more adaptive on the modern game, while also having its present from the ban list, unleashing the third copy of Engage. So now they have 3 copies of Engage, and they also had new support. One formidable trait of Sky Striker is its deep toolbox that can cater various matchup spread on the meta that helps you to get past tricky situations under different circumstances against your rival. Jamming Waves, Afterburners, and Widow Anchor along with your tech cards and hand traps can outwit most of the matchups on the metagame. So your deck is pretty much spacious. You have a lot of tools to work around to beat the opponents right now on the format, so you won't be empty-handed against various matchups on this quite diverse format, no? And also, Sky is also the limit for Sky Striker. So, an elite pilot who has great technical skills and mechanics in the game can elevate the performance of the deck due to the high skill expression of the deck, and also it rewards the immense brain power or brain cells that you invest on this deck. So when you're good at the game, you're very much qualified to play the Sky Striker because it really rewards good players on this deck. But that is also the bane of the deck. The pilot of this deck must possess great technical skills to use this deck at its very best. And a poor pilot can definitely make the deck look like garbage, to be brutally honest. So yeah, that's also the downside of Sky Striker. When you don't possess the good qualities of a player on this game, you're not really in a bright spot to play this deck, to be honest. That's the harsh reality of playing Sky Striker on Yu-Gi-Oh! And also, Sky Striker has not a good going first board, only ending up on Shizuku Pass most of the time. So you need to be on point on using your resources as perfectly as it should be. So yeah, the board is quite underwhelming with Shizuku Pass only. You need to perfectly execute all of your plays and all of your movements using this deck. Finally, going to our first on this list. As the saying says, birds on the same feather flocks together. We have Fluandris to spearhead our top 5 best rogue decks on this edition. On this January, fresh from getting support from the recent ban list, map is on 3 now, and boy, it sure is sweet for the birds. So yeah, moving on. The most notable quality of Fluandris is this deck acts like a modern anti-meta or meta beat deck that is always here to pest the format, no matter what format it is. Fluandris can spread like a bird flu and infest the meta game with their timely display with a stun-oriented game from M-Pen to annoying the best decks with their floodgates and high-impact hand traps like Shifter and Fissure, while also having the ability to nullify Maxi in our OCG format. So it is very huge to utilize this deck that can play around Maxi very effectively. When you can nullify the 3 cards on your opponent's deck, it makes your deck more resilient on the format. And also, Shifter and Fissure also contributes a lot towards the success of the deck that serves as a countermeasures to mitigate the graveyard-centric gameplay of most meta decks right now on the meta game. So, I think the qualities of Fluandris really dwells down on having the ability to play anti-graveyard cards like Shifter and Fissure that is very helpful on dealing against the much more powerful decks than them on the format. And also, the deck is fairly easy to play. It is really smooth sailing, so that makes the deck less stressful and smooth. So it can be a good factor on managing your stress level and stamina for longer tournaments like big events and such. So when you can preserve your energy and your stress on long tournaments and big events, it is a good measurement on how effective this deck can be, because it really helps you to freshen up your mind on long tournaments. And also, this deck has also glaring weaknesses. One notable weakness of that is it has big problems with relevant hand traps on the game, like Imperm, Veiler, and Roll, are very relevant right now. And those cards can demolish the gameplay of Fluandries all in all. And also, Fluandries is also a deck that is known for breaking. So yeah, as it suffered heavily from the loss of copies of Path of Prosperity before. So this deck really breaks a lot. When you play Fluandries, you will know what I am saying on this video. I think this deck really is breaky, so you will suffer on unlucky situations using this deck, and that's the main reason why I don't play Fluandries, because those unlucky moments can be really draining and upsetting, because you don't really lose because you lack skills, but you lack luck on these Fluandries. So yeah, that's our top 5 best rogue decks on January 2024 video. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you do learn something from this video. Hit the subscription button if you wanna see more contents like this, and hit the like button if you want to support my channel. So thank you for watching, and see you on the next one. Peace.